Alright, we're back, of course, talking FF7, talking some Rebirth. The plan today was to look at the Kadia Gaming panel for Rebirth, the Summoning a Masterpiece. I did have at least one person hit me up about being interested in me covering the whole thing, and as long as one person's interested, I am more than down. That said, it's been a kind of busy day, and I'm just now getting around to making a video. It's like 6:30 p.m. my time right now, and there's just not enough time for me to obviously go through like a 2-hour video and break it down and talk about a bunch of shit from it. It's just not possible. So instead, we're going to look at some translations from Shin Arc from the Rebirth Ultimania, of course, and tomorrow we'll look at that panel. If you guys are interested in watching me break down that panel, be on the lookout for that video tomorrow. I'll hop right into it with a Barrett-related translation. Myrna Wallace is a supportive wife to her younger husband and a patient, accepting woman who became Barrett's partner after they fell in love with her at first sight. Close friends with Dyne and his family, Myrna lost her life during the incident 4 years ago. So not directly just about Barrett, but obviously Barrett's wife, which was one of my favorite aspects of Rebirth, even though it's like, it is important because it's important to the character, but it's not important to the overall story, if you could say, I guess. But it's something I was wanting leading up to Rebirth. I think prior to the game coming out, I had like a video I did, I think, where I talked about things that I wanted. And I wanted to see like Barrett's wife and Dyne's wife, right? They were only ever talked about in the original game, and it's very briefly talked about. Barrett, I think, mentions Myrna like one time in the Krell prison, right? And then obviously Dyne mentions Eleanor. But it's something I was really looking forward to and hoping for when it came to Rebirth. And we finally got that. We got faces put to the characters, even if we never see them again, and if we never see Myrna, Eleanor ever again. It's great that we finally got to see the characters, which gives me hope one day, even though this is kind of off topic, of getting to see Cloud's dad. I say that, but we've seen Glenn plenty. Speaking of Dyne, actually, in FF7 Rebirth, a dark desire for revenge and excessive drug use have pushed Dyne's mind to the brink of collapse, causing him to hallucinate the voices of his deceased family members. So obviously when it comes to the channel, we like to read anything in regards to like Barrett/Dyne, or any kind of like Zack-related stuff. This one, however, I wanted to read just because that's a detail that I definitely don't believe was in the game, that Dyne was a drug abuser. And I think it makes sense for his character, given like what happened, right? He thinks everybody he's ever known is dead. Specifically, of course, like his best friend's family, and like his wife and his kid. Like as far as he knows, they died, like 4 years ago. So I think it makes some sense that he would like fall into like a, some sort of deep dark hole, depression, maybe go towards drug use, that sort of thing. But they definitely didn't portray that in the game, unless I somehow missed that. It's like a T-rated game, so you can't like lean too much into like the drug use type shit. But I think it's like a nice maybe like twist on like the depression side of stuff for Dyne, where he inevitably kills himself in the original game. He still does, obviously, in Rebirth, but in a very different way. But I think it makes sense for his character. It's just like, it's kind of weird that like they couldn't portray that in the game, but you got to go to like the Ultimania to learn that Dyne had some sort of like drug use problem. With stuff like this, though, I have to like look too much into it, because like what drugs are there in the FF7 world, right? There's nothing, as far as I'm aware. Again, I don't know. Like, I'm not like a lore expert. Like, what drugs would there be? Is it just the same drugs that we have? They just obviously don't portray that in the media. Like, is he just smoking weed? Is he doing like some hardcore shit? Is it like magical, fantastical world drugs? Is that maybe how he has his weird fucking Magneto powers? Is that like part of the drugs he's using? It gives him like abilities and powers and shit? I don't know. Again, I will say, I think like him like having drug problems, I think is actually like a nice detail for the character, but it's kind of fucking pointless when it's not portrayed in the game. We don't learn that about the character in the game. We got to go to like outside materials. I will say, though, it does make sort of sense in hindsight when you go back to like the Dyne and Barrett scene in Rebirth, when you go like Solo 101 talking in like that shack or whatever, and Dyne's acting kind of crazy, right? And I think I talked about that in my video where I broke down that whole segment and gave my thoughts on it. That I wasn't sure like why he was acting that way, but if he was maybe high on drugs, that can explain it. But again, that didn't come across in the fucking game.
Hell, Marlene, set a place for Barrett.
We're actually going to go even further with this discussion a bit, just because I was looking at the replies under the Shin Arc tweet about this, and somebody did point out there actually is like bottles and needles kind of in the area around Dyne. I guess it's just a detail that I personally didn't pick up on. A lot of people didn't either, because other people were replying that they didn't realize that like there's like a drug issue with Dyne, but it's actually kind of there in the game. They just didn't put a lot of emphasis on it, I suppose. But to give him credit, it is there in the game. It's just a lot of us, I guess, didn't necessarily pick up on it. And speaking to Cloud's dad previously, we do have a bit about Claudia. Claudia is an excellent cook who single-handedly raised Cloud after her husband's early demise. Having received little news and eager to learn how her only son is getting on in Midgar, Claudia showers Cloud with love and attention. So really just want to read that to talk about Cloud's dad a bit more, because I do kind of briefly mention him there with the early demise thing. I feel like there's going to be some sort of payoff to Cloud's dad based on like the original FF7 talked about him like very, very briefly. I think it's during the Calm flashback. Maybe you guys can correct me on that. Cloud just mentions like something about him like dying when he's young or something along those lines. And of course, like we got Trace's Two Paths, which is over here on the shelf. We got that kind of gave us a little bit more on Cloud's dad about like him going off into the mountains, and like his body was never found, but like his gear or equipment was found or something like that. But like that's obviously like generally in media, like movies, TV shows, whatever. If you don't like see a body, then they're not dead, right? Like, I feel like there's got to be some sort of payoff to that. Whether that's Glenn or not, whatever, that's kind of more of a meme. But when it comes to Rebirth, I don't think Cloud ever mentions his dad like he did in the original FF7, right? You guys can correct me on that as well. Is there any mention of Cloud's dad at all in the fucking game? Because I don't think there is. And it's an interesting like change up from the original FF7, and also with Tracy 2 Pass giving us a bit on Cloud's dad, but maybe Rebirth not doing that. A little interesting. I feel like there's got to be some sort of like, whatever it might be, some sort of payoff. It's also just kind of this weird subject they've been avoiding for the longest time. Like, we've never had a name for the character, or like really what happened to him up until Tracy 2 Pass, right? Which gives us a little bit on the character. Like, we don't have a name yet. Like, what is Cloud's dad's name? There's a reason they're avoiding that. Now, is that Glenn? I don't fucking know. Is it fucking President Shinner, which has been a theory for the longest time? Maybe, I suppose. I don't know. But it's like this weird thing that they just don't want to give us for some reason. And it's like, why not? Like, why, after all this time, FF7's, pushing 30 years old, we're not too far from that shit. Like, why do we not even know Cloud's dad's name, much less what actually happened to him? Totally. Asked if Superman or Sephiroth would win in a fight, Sephiroth VA Tyler Hoechlin said Superman would win just because. So first off, I just wanted to read that because we haven't had much of Tyler ever talking about Sephiroth in interviews as far as I'm aware. Like, I've been covering this shit extensively since 2019. I don't think I've ever read any interview with Tyler Hoechlin talking about Sephiroth at all. So, like, anytime we get the opportunity to, we want to for sure. And also, I just wanted to read that and just say, yeah, of course Superman bodies Sephiroth. Sephiroth lost to powerless child Cloud. Obviously, he's a bit distracted and stuff, but still the point stands. Like, the only, like, advantage or, like, thing that Sephiroth can maybe have in a fight against Superman would be that he does have magic, which is, like, an effective thing against Superman. It's not necessarily, like, a weakness, but it's something that can, like, hurt him and, like, affect him and shit, right? So it is, like, one sort of, like, advantage, I suppose, that Sephiroth could have in a fight against Superman, but ultimately, we're talking, Sephiroth fucking Superman. Like, his whole thing is being just over the top powerful, right? It's like his whole gimmick in a way. Like, if you go like the old days of comics, Superman was like able to like sneeze away galaxies and shit, right? He's ridiculous. They've obviously toned that back a bit, but he's still done like amazing feats over the years, just kind of depending on who the writer is and stuff. But I mean, come on, yeah, of course Superman fucks up Sephiroth. And look, man, Sephiroth is cool as shit. One of my favorite villains in media or whatever. But he's really not that strong. Like, in his world, he's pretty powerful, obviously. In a one-on-one fight, he's really powerful. But he doesn't have, like, crazy feats realistically, right? He's not even, like, the strongest villain in the franchise, right? Like, at least Kefka in, like, Final Fantasy VI destroys the world for real. Sephiroth attempts to. He doesn't succeed in it. But Kefka does, right? Repeating FF7 again with the Remake project, then we know how that concludes. And he doesn't have any crazy feats realistically. What's his craziest feat? Destroying Nibelheim? Hell, even in Final Fantasy IX, Kuja destroys an entire world by himself, right? He destroys Terra. Now he taps into the trance power, but that is his own power. Sephiroth needs the black materia and summon a meteor from outer space in order to even attempt to destroy the planet, right? Like, there's just, like, levels of this shit. Like, he's not really that strong. Again, unless the Remake trilogy adds to his feats and his abilities and powers, right? And they sort of have, he's definitely, like, hopping worlds to a certain degree. Now, what are these worlds that are inside the planet in Rebirth? That's a whole different conversation, obviously, but Ginatok's age is over 2,000 years. The Gi's physical makeup and perception of time differ fundamentally from the beings of this planet that continue to linger long after their flesh has failed. There's not really a whole lot I can add to that because we've kind of talked about the Gi tribe before on the channel a little bit. I just want more of them. They're super interesting in Rebirth, right? Like, way more than they were in the original game. There was only, like, a little bit of lore for them. Mostly that they were just, like, some sort of, like, rival tribe of Cosmo Canyon or some shit like that. But, like, they went a completely different route with the Remake trilogy, where they're, like, from another planet or some shit, right? And they're, like, attached to the black materia, like, create the black materia or some shit. It's, like, it's way different. In a good way, though. In a really good way. And I want more of the Gi tribe. And I assume we're going to get more of them maybe in the third game, just because they are attached to the black materia. I don't know in what way, though. But it's kind of interesting that Ginnatok is over 2,000 years old, because that means he predates whenever Jenova landed on the planet, right? Because she crash-landed in Fob de Cetra, like, 2,000 years ago, or whatever. I don't know if he's always been on the same planet, on Gaia, for 2,000 plus years at this point. But he's at least older than that event, which is kind of cool. One of those things that I'm not sure if we'll ever get any more lore on, like in terms of like more in-depth lore on the Gi tribe, or I guess the Gi, whatever you want to call them. Like, they're from another planet, so like when you say that to me, like, I want to see their goddamn planet. What's their home planet look like? And that's something we'll just probably never ever get to see, unfortunately. And last up for the video, a Zack-related one. Zack's father is 60 and his mother is 55. They worry about their son, who left Gongaga 10 years ago, and has neither returned nor sent any recent letters. Zack's father stands firmly behind his wife, whose constant worry for her son's safety has left her frail and tired. So I thought that info was a little bit interesting just because, like, his parents are a little bit older than I realized, or I guess I thought. Like, when I look at them, they obviously look old in that picture, but I wasn't thinking, like, 60 and 55, man, because that puts them Like, and they were kind of like mid to late 30s when they had Zack, because they have like the exact time frame for when Rebirth is taking place. But you know, the FF7 story takes place at the end of more or less the year 2007 and picks up in January 2008. That's kind of the span of the FF7 story is only like 2 months. It's really, really short. So I don't know exactly where we're at in Rebirth time frame, but more or less Zack is 23 years old by the time the FF7 is happening. So you subtract 23 from their ages. Dad would have been 37 and the mom would have been like 32. This isn't really that old to have kids, honestly, but still, it's just like I thought they were a little bit younger than that. I don't know what I thought they were. I didn't have like an age in mind, but most like old people in like FF7 are like really in their 30s. Outside of like a few characters like Vincent or Nanaki or like President Shinner maybe. Most of them like Barrett and Sid that are portrayed as like older guys are really just like in their 30s. Obviously, Zack's parents weren't going to be in their 30s because of his age, but still, I was thinking maybe like 40s potentially, but they're a little bit older. I also want to read that about Zack's parents just because like it's another kind of like sad thing when it comes to the character of Zack, where there's just like a lot of like unresolved stories because of his death, right? Because like Aerith, at least with like the remake continuity, doesn't seem to like know exactly for sure what happened with the character of Zack. And obviously we talk about wanting to like see those two reunite, but also I'd like to like have Zack's parents get some closure, even if it's just like confirmation of his death, which would be sad, of course, but like they still aren't like sure exactly what's going on. Like they don't know what happened to their kid. They don't know like he went off and did all this shit and is like this fantastic hero and saving lives and technically put in motion, Cloud saving the world and shit, all that other stuff, right? Like he's like the catalyst for a lot of the FF7 story, right? They just don't know that about their son, right? And I think it'd be nice for them to get some level of closure, whether it's like a letter from Shinra kind of confirming his death or something, or like some sort of like letter anonymous or whatever from like Cisne or Song or Reeve maybe or somebody, I don't know who, just to like let them know kind of what actually happened with their son. Anyways, limited, that is pretty much the video. Again, it's kind of an impromptu video. It's not what the plan was for today. We were obviously going to come back and look at like more translations eventually from the Shinra arc like feed on Twitter, but that wasn't the plan today. But here we are. First, best off to you guys. We talked about a lot of different things in this video, so just what are your overall thoughts, I suppose. And again, just a reminder: be on the lookout for tomorrow's video, which probably be a massive video. They're summoning a masterpiece, the Qiddiya Gaming Rebirth panel. I don't know how big the video is going to be. We'll see. Anyways, that's the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social works in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @FYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.